Hi guys, how you doing and welcome to my channel, Claire Thackeray. Today we're going to do a channeling with Sir Winston Churchill, okay, who was a past British Prime Minister. Before we begin, I'm just going to go through his date of birth and his date of death and his life number and what that means. So he was born on the 30th of November 1874. He died on the 24th of January 1965. His life number is 23. 23 means change, progress, innovation, revolution. Okay? 2 and 3 means 5. 5, personal freedom, independence, individualism, adaptability, major life changes, life lessons learned through experience. Those of you that know the history of Winston Churchill, he was a Prime Minister that got us through World War II. So the meaning of his numerology is very, very important. He is very, very, very different to anyone I have channeled before. He didn't want me to put a disclaimer at the beginning of this video because he said it was stuff and nonsense. I want to, because the world that we live in now is very different to the world that he lived in, okay? He was a man of his time. He was a man of patriarchal energies. He was a man that was controversial. He was a man that was loathed. He was a man that was admired. He was a man that got the country through World War II. He was also a man that was a member of the MASONs. And I've actually briefly read some of that this morning, a report that a fellow, one of the MASONs, I'm not going to, he's saying cut the cord, quit the cord. Basically I read a report from the Masons this morning on his time in there. I briefly read it because a lot of it went over my head. Basically he joined, it was a part of his ancestry, it was a part of his family line. You know, his father will have done it, his grandfather will have done it, they joined, it was part of what they do. From what I can tell, he did play a part in a lot of the ceremonial stuff. As I was reading, I got a little bit like, there's a lot of information to digest, and one of the things he said was let him explain it, okay, from his point of view, because there's a lot of stuff that's been manipulated, okay, about his time there. One of the things he is saying as I'm talking about it now is that it wasn't as dark as it was made out to be, okay, and he's saying that a lot of what goes on there isn't actually as dark, controversial, isn't actually as dark as it's made out to be. He says within any group or belief system, anybody, even, I mean, stop stepping aside from that, even within the spirituality belief system at the minute, the New Age Awakening, I have spoken about, I'm seeing darkness in there. I am seeing people that take things to the extreme, and he has been showing me that as well, that not all of these belief systems are dark. It's a small corner of it that goes rogue, okay? So it's important that while sitting down with Sir Winston Churchill that we remember that, okay? As I'm seeing him now, he is in an office, an old style office. It feels like it's Downing Street. There's lots of papers, lots of books. He's in a black suit, white shirt. He's got his cane ready. He's a very forthright man, okay? He came through last night really strong, really strong. Before I get there, I've got a list of people that I've got to channel, that I'm interested in channeling. And I did a It Dip Do thing on my list, this week, of who I was with the pen and wherever my pen was going to land. And all of a sudden my hand literally went boom, and it went on to Winston Churchill. So I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. He came through quite strong because I had an issue last night with Patreon, which I'm going to explain in another video, and I got quite upset over it. And he came in and he said, why are you getting so upset over something that's just a normal way of life? And he said, you all, as in us, everybody, you're all getting so upset and so traumatised and so touchy and so hyper feeling over everything that happens, everyday life, an argument with your boss. I said, should I have said that? An argument with a relative, an argument with a partner, everything is so feely. He says everything is gone. He comes from an area where it was very stiff upper lip. He comes from a bloodline that was very stiff upper lip. And he says, looking down on the world now, he says there's so much feeling, but it's making us ill. He said from his perspective, as he looks down, he says everything is so fragile. And one of the things he showed me was, he showed me humans, and he showed me them without a spine, a backbone. And he said there's no backbone anymore, there's no equipped, they're not equipped, we're not equipped to deal with life. He says we're not equipped to deal with life. He says we're not equipped to deal with stress. He says we're not equipped to deal with strife. I asked him about the possibility of a WW3, and he said it will be a war of words, it will be a war of words. He says, but the worrying thing is, if it did develop, he feels that people are not equipped to it. Mental, he says mental strength is everything. So as I'm doing this channeling, he's saying mental strength is everything. The reason why they won the war, because of mental strength. It wasn't because they felt and they feel and they... Yes, a lot of the people had to shut their feelings down, but at the same time they had to have this. And sometimes you have to shut the heart off, and this isn't me, by the way. Sometimes you have to shut the heart off and put the mind into action, okay? My energy feels very different as I'm channeling him. He is a very strong man, by the way. And he's saying some will listen to these words and be triggered. He can't get over the whole trigger thing at the minute. When I was actually discussing some of the things and some of the topics we could bring in, and I should want to talk about that, he couldn't grasp that. He's saying that that is causing more trouble and more divide, and a man should be able to say what he needs to say. A man should not be judged for how he lives. A man should not be judged for his belief system, okay? And the problem with the world is now too many people are judged and too many people are walking on eggshells. I asked him about his... So let's do it on camera. Let's ask him about his relationship with the Queen. So his relationship with the Queen... He's showing me the early stages of her reign, and when she was, he calls her a young girl. She was a young girl, and he's showing me that he struggled to know how to deal with her. She was easily swayed, but at the same time, very stubborn. How do you view the monarchy now? How does he view the monarchy now? He hates it. He hates it. He hates the world as it is now. He hates it. He hates the government. He hates what it's all tending to. He hates it. He's actually saying it needs to go. It needs to go. All of it needs to go. One of the things he said last night to me was that the powers that were in place then are very different to the powers that were. He said it's very different. He said if he came back now, as he is, as Winston, coming in as he is now, he couldn't cope. He couldn't cope. He couldn't even cope in the circles that he used to socialising. He couldn't cope with it. He said it's so different. It's lost its way. He's saying you as in me, you are right about spirituality. It has lost its way. So many of the belief systems, religion, Buddhism, the MASON stuff, has lost its way, and it's become a poison. It's become a darkness, and he's actually saying he wouldn't know how he would deal with being in life now. Before I go any further, one of his present reincarnations, and this may shock some, it may not shock some, is Boris Johnson, okay? Boris Johnson was born whilst he was alive. Now, I've explained how this can happen in previous videos on past lives, that the soul can choose to come down at different times. And one of the reasons why Boris cannot fit in is because he still has a lot of the old Winston energy within him, and he's struggling, and that's why he says the stuff he says. He's saying Winston is saying he's actually quite a nice person, but he just doesn't fit into the narrative, the modern day narrative, and he's struggling to fit into the modern day narrative. And he's actually said, please don't be triggered. You see, this is what I mean. Please don't be triggered. Tough stuff, stuff it. He's actually saying if he'd have been allowed to do things his way, he's saying, look at all the other countries in the world where it's a lot stricter. Look at all the other countries in the world where there's not many choices, but look at how the UK wasn't as strict, and look how healthy that is. To watch this video, you're going to have an open mind. There's no space for yes but, yes but, yes but, and there's no space for judgment. There's no space for did you know this? There's no space for that. This is a soul that was alive before any of us were born. The vast majority of us were born. What does he think of the government now, the Conservatives? What does he think about the present government? He's just shaking his head. He's just shaking. He's appalled. He's appalled at every... See, I can't say that. He's... Oh, I can't. It's too mismatched. It's too mixed up. It's too... He is from an era This is interesting because he showed me there's been one Prime Minister that he's admired, and that was Margaret Thatcher. And yet he showed me what in the Parliament and what he thinks of it, and he said about a lot of the women that are in there. And I was like, well, if you liked Margaret Thatcher that was a woman, what is the difference between some of the women that are in Parliament? And he says they're very toxic. They're very toxic. They play games, they manipulate. He likes strength. He really likes strength. He doesn't like mind games. He doesn't like people using the fact they're a woman. That's what he's trying to say. He doesn't like people. I'm a woman. He says he likes a strong woman. It's not that he doesn't like women. He likes strong women. He doesn't like them to use their... He doesn't like any of that. He doesn't like any of the scandals that have been going on in there. Let's pull some cards. Let's pull some cards. Let's pull some cards. So, Parliament back then, the world back then. Parliament back then when you were in charge. Oops. It was a very different time. It was a more settled time and it was a more balanced time. We've got the Emperor, we've got the card of the Six of Swords, we've got the Ace of Wands. Yeah, men ruled, men ruled. It was obviously very male. I thought there was any female politicians back then, was there? Probably not, probably not. It was very patriarchal, but it worked for the time. It worked for the time. This isn't about women. This is about obviously he said the people of... He said in this new world we're talking about, you know, healing the patriarchal. He says, but actually the patriarchal is still needed because patriarchal energy, he's saying, gets things done. You know, so if you're out of sync with your divine, we're both made, we're all made up of divine masculine, divine feminine. If either of these are out of sync, there is a problem, okay? So it was about getting things done. It was about the right people leading, okay? It was about progress. It was actually about progress. Getting the job done, getting people through war, getting people through the issue of the day. And it was about work. And he said, you know, when he looks down into Parliament now, he says there's very little work done compared to the work the MPs would have been doing back then. It was a constant 24-hour job with little rest, and it made him ill. Can we have cards for the present day Parliament, please? Present day Parliament. Present day Parliament. Present day Parliament. Lovers, loss, Ace of Pentacles. Obviously there's a new Prime Minister coming in. And party, party, party. See, the minute I got that out, it was party, party, party. He's just not happy with it. He said back then, yes, they would have had get-togethers and certain gatherings, but they would not have had all of this scandal. It just wasn't there. It wasn't there. This scandal, this sleaze, he's seen this sleaze. Yes, people had their moments, but he's talking about something very different to what we're experiencing now, and their mind's not on the job. Okay, there's loss. They've not got the power that they should have, if that makes sense. But at the same time, he's saying actually they shouldn't have power because they're not equipped for it. They're not equipped for power and position and for responsibility. Who will be the new Prime Minister? What does the new Prime Minister look like energetically? One of the things he said it's not decided yet. We, the British public, will have to be balanced. The card of Temperance. They will offer all the same that has been offered before, but they will not fulfil their promise. There will be the card of Deceit, and before long we will be looking for somebody else. He's saying the next person that comes in, he's showing me 2, so I'm not sure if that's 2 years or 2 terms. I think it's 2 years. This person isn't going to last. This person is very weak. This person is intellectually weak, energetically weak. This person cannot lead, okay? He's asking the British public to get back that inner strength they had. Not the revolution. He doesn't want that. He doesn't like revolution, by the way. He doesn't like that uprising. He says strength comes in so many different ways than taking on the public. He doesn't like that. He says if you only understood that if you all work together like they did in the war, then change comes in. But he says the British public are going to have to be strong over the next couple of years. There is no space for wishy-washy. There is no space for weak-willed. There is no space for uncompromised. There is no space for feeling. He says, I know a lot of people watching are probably finding it hard to understand that I'm saying no feelings, but feelings have gone too far. He said, I live in a world of everything's feelings and talking. He says, but your mental health statistics are through the roof. Your mental health centres are full to capacity. Your mental health structures are failing because there's too much of it. And he says, action. You're getting up out of bed on a morning and getting things done, okay? Getting things done is the way that you get through this, okay? He's saying listen to the good people. There are many people within these structures that are good people that are trying to navigate us. He's actually showing, he's showing me the MASONs, and he's showing me upgrades that are coming. He said, there's nothing to worry about. There is nothing to fear. He says, there's nothing to worry about. They are receiving upgrades. They're very different to what they were back then. And they did go rogue. But he says, what you have to understand is there's a divine power that is much more stronger. So anyone that does go rogue is stopped. Okay? Queen of Swords. I've ended on the Queen of Swords. Who is the Queen of Swords? I wonder if it's going to be Liz Truss that gets in. I did predict it in a short, you know. I said next female Prime Minister, and the next Prime Minister will be female. I think it's going to be Liz Truss. He's just shaking his head. He's just shaking his head. He doesn't like it. Doesn't like any of it. Your feelings towards the monarchy as it is now, the feelings towards the monarchy as it is now, the feelings towards the monarchy at the Pilgrim, the Shadow. He preferred the old type monarchy, the Mirror. He's saying that as well, it's reflecting back to where we were, it's reflecting back to where we are now. The trouble and the strife that is in all our normal day life He preferred that. He's showing me Queen Mary. He preferred that raid. He preferred that time with Queen Mary. He preferred. He's saying she lost control of it, did Elizabeth? She lost control of it. Her dad had control of it. Her dad was also an MASON. She lost control of it, and she's let too many influences come in. Margaret Thatcher, he's saying, was a very different character. She was very strong, and they didn't like that, so that's why Margaret had to go. The Queen is just... He says, I tried to gently train her and coax her and teach her, and she listened in the early days. He says, but as he has passed and as others have passed, things have changed, and she's just become, yeah. What's his parting message for us? What's his parting message? This may go over into 2 videos. If it does, it is what it is. In fact, I'll stop it now and I'll go into the next video. See you in the next one. Bye.